It is now time for the Robesonian Sports Report with Chris Styles on 97.1 FM, 1340 AM, WAGR in Lumberton, covering sports for Robeson County. Now here's your host, Chris Styles.
And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome to the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR. I'm your host, Chris Styles, sports editor at the Robesonian. And time for a 30-minute quick look at sports in Robeson County over the past week and what's coming over the next week or so as well. And as I always say, we just scratched the surface here in this 30-minute show, but do want to take a quick glance and get around to kind of looking at what's going on for everybody. So jumping right into Week 2 results from high school football locally, and Purnell Swett beat Fairmont 40-12. That was a game that began Friday, was suspended due to weather, and then resumed and completed on Saturday. Lee County beat St. Paul's 41-19 on Friday night. Grace Creek beat Red Springs 62-26 on Friday. And then, no, actually, that was on Saturday as well. Wingate beat UNCP 17-12 on Saturday at the collegiate ranks locally as well. So, starting with Purnell, Swett, and Fairmont, Swett led 14-0 at the point of suspension in the second quarter on Friday night, and then scored twice in 38 seconds after the resumption of play. Both of those were Simeon Lennon. He recovered a Charles Wilkes forced fumble and scored a short little run to the end zone, about 5 yards on the first play, in fact, when play resumed. And then a little bit later, Fairmont went 3 and out, and he had a punt return touchdown. That gave him 3 touchdowns at that point in the game, out of Purnell Swett's 4 to that point. He had a punt return touchdown as well on Friday night. Purnell Swett led 34-6 at halftime. Both sides then scored 6 points in the second half. Fairmont had a passing touchdown late in the first half, and then had a fumble recovery of their own for a touchdown. Long return, in fact. So that was Fairmont's first 2 touchdowns of the season. A lot of penalties in this game. The resumption was about 32 minutes of football, and it took well over 2 hours to play with all those flags and some scoring plays as well. Purnell Swett did run for 243 yards. Caleb Goins had 91 of those to lead the Rams. And they played both quarterbacks, both of their primary quarterbacks, Raymond Cummings and Aiden Locklear. Both played well, both contributed for the Rams. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. This is a young Fairmont team. They were 2-8 last year, and everything they had production-wise from that 2-8 team graduated for the most part. So some growing pains, but Coach Carthen felt like there may have been some freshmen that, as that game kind of moved into in the second half, they played some fresh guys, and some guys played pretty well in the second half, he felt like, and may have played their way into more playing time and bigger roles moving forward. And we're talking about some freshmen here, but he felt like he may have found some guys that were ready to step up. So Purnell Swett's home versus Red Springs this week. Fairmont's at Westover, and we'll be joined by Purnell Swett head coach Josh Deese here in just a bit. Lee County defeated St. Paul's 41-19. This was a game of missed opportunities for St. Paul's. In the words of Coach Mike Setzer, they, quote, left some meat on the bone. 4 red zone trips that they didn't capitalize in this game. They did have a kick return touchdown from Malachi Locklear, a touchdown catch from Ja'Kai Purcell, a touchdown run for Quintel McNeil. Lee County led 20-13 at halftime after a back-and-forth first half, but then outscored the Bulldogs 21-6 in the second half, as Lee County beat St. Paul's for the second straight year. Joshua McBride did run for 156 yards. Quarterback Theophilus Setzer ran for 104 on just 8 carries. Very impressive rushing night for him. Lee County, though, ran the ball quite well as well. Rushed for 382 yards, including 197 from Rayshawn Brown, who scored 3 touchdowns for the Yellow Jackets. St. Paul's is 1-1 after the loss. They return home to play South Brunswick coming up this week. Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Styles, as we're going over the Week 2 high school football results locally. And Grace Creek beating Red Springs, 62-26. This was a game Saturday after the storms on Friday night. And for the second straight week, Red Springs' defense struggled to stop the run. Grace Creek ran for 304 yards in the win. Alfonso Myers had 141 of those. Zeke Reed had 105 on the ground. Coach Tim Ray for Red Springs said that was largely just Grace Creek sustaining drives and kind of getting 3, 4, 5 yards at a time. There weren't a ton of big chunk plays, but they were very effective at just moving the ball and keeping the drive going. Grace Creek did lead this game 35-20 at half, so it was closer in the first half than what the score may indicate, the final score may indicate. But then Grace Creek scored 27 straight points in the third quarter to put it away. TJ Ellerby did have a good night for Red Springs with a kick return, touchdown, and 2 touchdown catches. Raymond Blue also ran for a touchdown for the Red Devils. And as I mentioned, Red Springs goes to Purnell Swett on Friday. And it was officially week 0 for college football at the Division II level. But UNCP did play a week 0 game, and here at home lost 17-12 to Wingate on Saturday. The record-setting UNCP offense from last year wasn't quite the same here in Game 1, and that's, sometimes that happens with offenses. They're a little slow at the beginning of the season. In fact, that happened last year, even as great of numbers as they put up for the whole season. They were a little slow the first couple weeks last year, and they struggled to finish drives on Saturday offensively. UNCP did, and were held to 104 rushing yards, and even that number is a little bit deceptively high in that 70 yards of that came from quarterback Colin Johnson. Just 34 yards of that came from their running back stable, which is a much too low a number for the Braves to do what they're looking to do offensively. UNCP's defense did play well. They did allow 338 yards to Wingate, but Wingate only scored 17 points in the game. Wingate took a 7-6 lead in the second quarter and never trailed after that, but UNCP stayed right there. It was never outside of a one-possession game, and the Braves had a chance on their final drive before a late interception sealed it for the Bulldogs. One breakout performer the Braves did have on the offensive side was Jaquan Albright, who kind of a utility player on that side of the ball. 5 receptions for 66 yards, and then he ran the ball 3 times for 32 yards as well. This is a JUCO guy, and he didn't play last year, so he was just very excited to be back on the field and took advantage of it, certainly, with a good game on Saturday. This was one game for the Braves against a very good team. It's a tough loss in that it's a close game, but not doomsday for UNCP. All their goals are still in front of them, particularly the MEC title, which they're looking to win this year and their last year in that league. And this was a non-conference game, of course, so doesn't hurt them in that sense. And Coach Hall said this week that sure, they could have played an easier team in the first game, but he didn't feel like they would improve by doing that. But by playing a tough opponent, and Wingate is certainly that, that they improved even as they came out on the wrong end on the scoreboard. UNCP's at Fayetteville State on Saturday. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And you can read recaps of all these games in the print edition of the Robesonian, as well as at Robesonian.com. Just getting started here on the Robesonian Sports Report. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk with Purnell Swett head football coach Josh Deese ahead of their game against Red Springs. You're listening to the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR. Back on the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR, and we're joined over the phone by Purnell Swett head football coach Josh Deese. How's it going, Coach?
Good, Chris. How you doing?
Good. So you guys with a 40-12 win over Fairmont on Friday, which became Saturday. So how important was it for you guys after the season opening loss to St. Paul's to get back in the win column last week?
Yeah, I think it was very important for us to come out and not just get a win, but establish our run game. That's something that we take pride on down here, and we done a real good job of doing that, and also getting our quarterback and receivers going as well. So yeah, it was big. We could have done a lot better with the penalties and all, but overall, yeah, we done a good job Friday and Saturday as well.
Yeah, and what was the challenge of kind of that weather situation for y'all starting the game, getting 8 minutes left in the second quarter, I think, when the delay happened, and then kind of having to go home, reset, and then come back Saturday morning and kind of do the whole thing over again?
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you as a player football is a very emotional game, and you get up big for a game and then just have it delayed and then ultimately postponed to do that over again the next day. And there's a lot that goes into that. Our guys were up on a big high, and they were disappointed when we told them that this game's going to be postponed. But they came out Saturday. I'm sorry. They came out Saturday a little flat, but we finally were able to get it together. With the big play. Like as soon as the game started, we had a big play, so that helped us our morale and getting back into the game a little bit with Simeon. Two big touchdowns to open the play back up. So it was difficult. There's a lot that goes into that. We had to come home and wash uniforms, and I had to go feed them and get more food for them to eat the next morning. It was a lot, but they handled it well. I'm proud of the fact that they came out ready to play football.
Yeah, and you mentioned Simeon Lennon, 2 touchdowns in 38 seconds of game time to start the resumption of play on Saturday morning, and he had 3 touchdowns total. What did he bring for y'all in that game to where he was so effective? And in general, what does he bring for y'all as kind of a Swiss Army knife type of player?
Yeah, Simeon, we've known since Simeon was in 9th grade that he is a special, not just football player, he's a special athlete. And I've been talking to him over the last 2 years, just give it a try, man. Just put the ball in your hand and let's see what can happen because he is that type of athlete. All he needs is a chance, and he can make it happen. Here you go. That's it right there. So he stepped up big for us. We're looking for big things in him out of our return game, and we're going to line him up at receiver as well moving forward. But he does good at safety, and I'm proud of Simeon. Really proud of Simeon.
And you mentioned there's stuff to clean up from that Fairmont game and even from the St. Paul's game before that. What are some of those things as moving forward that you're looking to kind of clean up and perfect for the Rams?
To me, it's the pre-snap penalties.
Yeah.
It started bad in against St. Paul's, and we weren't trying to hard count. We weren't going on 2. We were just false starting, and that is not how we are going to win games. And so we made a big point of that Fairmont week. I didn't allow the offense to go on 1 at all, and it got frustrating. There was a lot of up downs, a lot of yelling, but the kids responded the way they should. And there was no infighting. They were holding each other accountable. They accepted the punishment, and we definitely grew last week at practice. I intentionally made it hard on them, and I wanted to see how they were going to respond, and they responded the right way. So. We're going to cut down on those. We're going to cut down on all penalties, not just the pre-snap penalties, the unsportsmanlike, the holding. When we get that figured out, we are going to be a better team.
Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, and we're talking with Purnell Swett head football coach Josh Deese, and shifting gears from Red Springs from Fairmont to Red Springs this week. And it's you guys' home opener, so I'm sure that's an exciting time on campus. What's kind of the atmosphere been like on campus with anticipation of that home game on Friday night?
Yeah, it's just starting the season off with 2 road games, and that's tough. So our guys are looking forward to a relaxing day tomorrow after school where we can just sit in and have our meetings and just stay here. We don't have to load on a bus. We don't have to rush pregame meal. Our guys are we're looking forward to being able to just sit back and prepare for a home game, and it being the first home game and an in-county game. That's pretty big. So we expect a lot of people here Friday night to cheer on the Rams. I hope the stands are packed. And
you mentioned when we talked earlier this week, T.J. Ellerby and Jakelson Mack both, in your words, can score anytime they touch the football. So what will be how big of a challenge will it be to contain them on offense for Red Springs?
Oh, it's going to be it is the challenge. Last season, Ellerby, he took a little 3-yard slant and made our guy miss, and the next thing I know, he's scoring a touchdown. Band's playing, so we know he can do it. You see on film, he's catching a hitch and making everybody on Grace Creek miss. So we have to contain him. Like, number one priority is we cannot let him behind the defense. We have to rally to the ball, and Mac is another one as well. Yeah, we done a good job last year up front. Our front seven done a real good job containing the run, and we're not going to deviate from that. That's going to be our goal. Is if he gets the ball in his hands, we are swarming to the football. We're going to be punching the ball, snatching the ball. We're going to try to create turnovers best we can.
And when y'all are on offense, facing a Red Springs defense that has struggled against the run so far this season, and you said Monday, you're not even necessarily trying to take advantage of that, but it's just a great chance for y'all to be what you already are, and that's a run-heavy team.
Yes, it is. It's we're gonna stick with the run. We're gonna run the ball. That's our bread and butter. That's what we're known for. We have 3 capable running backs that we don't mind giving the ball to, and if you add Raymond in as well, reading the backside, that's a 4th running back. So we're going to do all we can to establish the run, and that ultimately helps open the pass up. So that's our number one priority on offense, is just to establish the run on the first whistle.
You mentioned Raymond Cummings, the quarterback. Aiden Locklear also played some quarterback snaps on Friday and Saturday for you. What's kind of the plan moving forward with those two and the quarterback battle, if you will?
Well, that's going to be a decision that we're going to make at practice. I have no idea which way we're leaning. So we'll find out. We'll find out Friday when offense goes on the field who's out there first. But I'm proud. I'm proud of Aiden to step in and challenge for this job. Like he let me tell you a little bit about Aiden. He had an injury this summer where he dropped a dumbbell. We were doing dumbbell bench, and he put the dumbbell down and almost took the tip of his finger off. Like, it was only a little bit hanging on. So just looking at that injury this summer, I didn't think he would be able to play. So for him to come back and challenge for the starting spot, that's incredible. He worked hard this summer. He was really down initially, thinking his season was over. But the good thing about it was his left hand. It was his non-throwing hand. So as soon as he was able to take a snap, he got right back in and continued to do what he done. So I'm proud of the fact that he stepped up and he's given a little competition this year.
Yep. And you mentioned another in-county matchup for you guys. It's the 3rd straight one you've played here in non-conference play, and you're ultimately playing all 4 possible in-county opponents with Lumberton at the end of the schedule. So why are those games important for you and for Purnell Swett and for the community at large?
Yeah, it's anytime we can get communities together, bring communities together. And football is a sport that does that. Anytime we can get Fairmont and Purnell Swett to come to a football game and the fans interact, we know each other. Red Springs, these guys know each other's families. They play travel baseball. They play AAU basketball together. So it's sort of like a everybody knows everybody type deal. And we can get together at a game, and the families are talking and cheering. And so, that to me, that's a big thing. I like the fact that we can do things like that. And it brings a bigger crowd. It brings a bigger crowd when you're in county as well.
Purnell Swett head coach Josh Deese, thanks for joining us here on the Robesonian Sports Report.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and we'll be right back here on WAGR. And back on the Robesonian Sports Report, and for the last segment of the shows we do each week, going to look ahead to the week that is to come for high school football and also UNCP here in Robeson County. And 4 games on the schedule locally on Friday. Red Springs is at Purnell Swett, South Brunswick at St. Paul's, Lumberton is at Clinton, and Fairmont is at Westover. And start with the in-county matchup, Red Springs and Purnell Swett. It's a 7:30 kickoff at Big Mo Stadium in Pembroke. The fourth of 9 in-county matchups this season. The fourth here through the first 3 weeks of the season, so it's been even more frequently, frankly, than a weekly thing to this point, and largely stays that way for most of the season. But both teams kind of looking for improvement, albeit from a different place. Purnell Swett coming off the win over Fairmont. Red Springs enters at 0-2 on the season. But Purnell Swett, as we talked about with Coach Deese, looking to clean some things up, particularly with the penalties in the first couple of games for them. Red Springs' run defense has struggled through the first 2 weeks, and now gets another challenge in that regard with run-heavy Purnell Swett team. Purnell Swett's defense will look to contain T.J. Ellerby and Jakelson Mack, both a couple of playmakers for Red Springs. They've had a good start to the season, both of them, despite the fact the team is 0-2 at the moment. Purnell Swett does lead the all-time series 6-1 and won last year's meeting 33-13 in Red Springs. Elsewhere, South Brunswick is at St. Paul's. That's a 7 p.m. kickoff Friday at J.S. Kinlaw Stadium. South Brunswick has an interesting start to the season with consecutive losses by the same score, 28-14, to Richlands and to South Columbus. And now they'll play the best team they've played yet with St. Paul's. The Cougars have had some success throwing the ball with Jade Daniels, but they've struggled to establish a run game. They have 66 total rushing yards on the season. Their defense has Jack Early and Nathan Early both averaging over 10 tackles apiece. St. Paul's comes off a 41-19 loss at Lee County, looking to rebound and also looking to avenge a 26-21 loss last year against South Brunswick down in Brunswick County. So St. Paul's kind of a couple of different ways that the redemption factor, if you will be motivation for them. After the loss to Lee County, I think they'll come back with a nice bounce back. And as I said with UNCP football, St. Paul's goals are still in front of them. Conference championship is a big one. So we'll see how they respond on Friday night, but should certainly be considered the favorites, I think, against South Brunswick. Lumberton is at Clinton on Friday night. This is 2 first-year head coaches, Notorious Baker and Johnny Boykin. The teams kick off at 7 p.m. in Clinton. And Clinton went to the 2A state championship game last year. It is the same program factually, but it is an entirely different football team this year. They had over 20 seniors on that team, and then also several other key pieces transferred as Corey Johnson left and went to Marlboro County to be the head coach there. And so Clinton has lost 44-0 to Northside Jacksonville, which is a team that won 1 game last year. And then a little bit more understandable, but a 59-0 loss as well to Wallace Rose Hill. This will be their home opener this week. Lumberton comes off a bye week, but beat Fairmont 35-0 in week 1. They didn't complete a pass in that game, but ran for over 300 yards. Reggie Bush had 210 yards and 4 touchdowns out of that. And then defensively, B.J. Regan had a big game for them with 12 tackles and 4 tackles for loss. This is a historical rivalry in a sense. Some older fans will tell you that. Back in the 50s to the 70s, about 25-year period where these were conference foes, Lumberton and Clinton. And Lumberton won 12, Clinton won 12, and they tied once in that span. But then they didn't play again from 1974 until last year when Clinton won 41-6. And it's interesting. I said this in the picks column that's live on Robesonian.com this morning, that I would have never guessed 2 or 3 weeks ago that I would say Lumberton has more confidence than Clinton coming into this game. But that's where we're at with Lumberton coming off the Fairmont win and Clinton having not scored a point yet this season. So we'll have to see if those trends continue or if perhaps Clinton can show some improvement as it grows into its kind of new situation and first-year head coach as it faces the Pirates on Friday night. Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian, looking over week 3 of high school football locally. And Fairmont is at Westover. That's a 7 p.m. kick in Fayetteville as the Golden Tornadoes seek their first win of the season. Westover, meanwhile, comes in at 2-0. They beat Seaforth 18-16 and Smithfield Selma 26-13 in the first 2 weeks of the season. Similar start for the Wolverines to what they did last year when they were 3-0, including a win over Fairmont before losing 6 of their next 7 to finish 4-6. They did beat Fairmont 34-8 last year and lead the all-time series 6-1. That includes 6 straight wins head-to-head. Fairmont was scoreless for nearly 6 quarters to start the season before breaking through for a touchdown pass late in the half against Purnell Swett Saturday morning, and then later scored on a fumble recovery. It's a young team. They've got some growing pains, as I mentioned earlier. But I think a big question around there is some of these young guys that Jeremy Carthen was really praising after the Purnell Swett game. Can those guys step up and make a difference and make this team more competitive as they face Westover and beyond? I think that's a question for them to answer. And we'll have to see if that can in fact be the case. They're still going to be young regardless, of course, but that potentially could be a place where they can pivot and show a little bit of kind of flashes, if you will, of promise. And at the local college ranks, UNCP is at Fayetteville State for the Two Rivers Classic rivalry on Saturday night. That's a 6 p.m. kick at Nick Gerald Stadium in Fayetteville. Last year, UNCP won 19-17. Ty Woods was 4 for 4 on field goals, including one in the final seconds of that game to earn the victory. Coach Mark Hall for UNCP and Richard Hayes for Fayetteville State, they always seem to play close, low-scoring games. This was the case when Hall was at Chowan, and they played a time or two. They played in the CIAA, but they played a time or two in the championship game of that league as well. And then as well last year, I mentioned the 19-17 game, which was Hall's first game at UNCP. Both anticipated another close, low-scoring game when they were both at the Two Rivers Classic preview show, which was held Tuesday in Fayetteville. Fayetteville State was 8-3 overall last year, but 8-0 in the CIAA. They won that conference in 2022 and have won 6 straight division titles, but lost the title game last year. And Saturday is the Broncos season opener. UNCP, I mentioned earlier, lost to Wingate in week 0. 3 quarterbacks played for Fayetteville State last year. All of them return, including the presumptive starter, Joe Owens. And over 2/3 of their offensive yards last year were through the run, and every key contributor in the run game also returns for the Broncos. Another notable returner is senior offensive lineman Michael Todd, who went to Lumberton High School, started there, was part of the Coast State Championship basketball team as well in 2020. And he is a huge key cog on the offensive line for them, an all-conference player 3 times over, I believe. And I'm working on a feature story on him heading into his senior year, which starts against the Braves on Saturday as well. Fayetteville State allowed just 15.9 points per game last year defensively. 4 of their top 6 tacklers are back, including Colby Merritt, who led them in tackles from a defensive back position last year, which you don't often see that. A lot of times it's a lineman or a linebacker that leads a team in tackles, but he did so from the defensive backfield a year ago. So he'll be a key player certainly for them this year. UNCP will look to take better advantage of its offensive opportunities in this game compared to what it did against Wingate on Saturday, and also build from a strong defensive showing in that game as they prepare for the Broncos. UNCP does lead the all-time series 9-1 in the Two Rivers Classic. They won the first 8 meetings from 2009 to 2016. When the series was revived in 2022, Fayetteville State won, but UNCP, I mentioned, won last year. And you can check out previews for all of those at Robesonian.com. The UNCP game preview is actually forthcoming at this point, but it will be up soon and in Saturday's paper as well. And then a predictions column for high school football is also on the website. Coverage each Friday night throughout the season, of course, of high school football, and each Saturday for UNCP at Robesonian.com and in successive print editions of the Robesonian. And then other fall sports also in season. Covered Lumberton soccer on Tuesday night. Actually lost a tough game to Cape Fear, but came back last night and beat Jack Britt in a key conference game. Covering Lumberton volleyball against Grace Creek tonight. And then there's also other fall sports content coming up as well. So For all of us here at the Robesonian at WAGR, for Paul Matthews behind the scenes, flipping the switches, if you will. And thanks to Purnell Swett head coach Josh Deese for joining us as well. I'm Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian. Thank you for joining us here on a beautiful Thursday morning on the Robesonian Sports Report.